"You'll never move on without me," she said confidently before ending everything and blocking me. I stayed silent and focused on my life. Months later, she watched my posts while using a fake account and tried messaging me again. "You'll never move on without me." She said it the way someone announces the weather. Flat. Certain. Like she had already run the numbers and filed the paperwork on my future. I remember standing there in the kitchen, holding a glass of water I'd forgotten I was even holding. She had her arms crossed, leaning against the counter, looking at me like I was a problem she'd finally solved. Not a person, a problem. And the worst part wasn't what she said. The worst part was the tiny, almost invisible smirk that followed. Like she was proud of it. Like she'd been saving that line. I didn't say anything back. Not because I had nothing to say, but because something in my chest just went quiet. Completely still. Like a room after a door slams shut. I set the glass down on the counter. Looked at her one more time. And I thought to myself, I hope you remember this moment. Because I will. What I didn't know then, standing in that kitchen, in that silence, was that she would spend the next several months trying to undo every single word she had just said. And that by the time she tried, it would already be too late. Let me tell you what I stood to lose. And I mean actually lose. Not just a relationship. Not just a girlfriend. 2 years. 2 years of mornings where she was the first thing I thought about. 2 years of inside jokes that only made sense between the two of us. 2 years of building something, brick by brick, compromise by compromise, argument and apology and dinner and drive and laughter. Actual laughter, the kind that makes your stomach hurt. All of that was on the table in that kitchen. And she was pushing it off the edge without blinking. I had changed things for her. Real things. I had turned down a relocation opportunity at work, a significant one, because she didn't want to leave the city. I'd rearranged my entire schedule, my savings, my friendships, to fit the shape of a life that included her. And she was standing there telling me, with a smirk, that without her I'd fall apart. I didn't realize it then, but that moment changed everything. Not because of what she said, but because of what it revealed. If you enjoy real stories like this, subscribe, because what happened next changed everything for me. I was 26 when this happened. She was 25. We had been together for 2 years and 3 months, living in the same mid-sized city, sharing a friend group, splitting time between her apartment and mine. That's all you need to know. Everything else will come out in the story. Her name was Qley, and for a long time, Qley was the kind of person who made you feel like the room tilted slightly when she walked in. She was sharp, creative, funny in the specific way where you couldn't always tell if she was joking. We met at a mutual friend's birthday gathering, a rooftop thing, late summer, those golden hours where everything looks better than it actually is. She was standing near the railing, looking out at the skyline, not talking to anyone. I walked over because I genuinely wanted to know what she was thinking. That was the version of Qley I fell for. The one who seemed to be always thinking something deeper than what she was saying. The first year was mostly good. Not perfect. No relationship is. But genuinely, consistently good. We argued about small things, the way couples do. Dishes. Weekend plans. Whose turn it was to deal with the landlord. Normal friction. We talked about the future with the kind of casual confidence that felt earned. Not forced. Not performative. Just assumed. Then something shifted somewhere in year 2. I can't point to one specific moment. It wasn't a blowout fight. It wasn't a dramatic revelation. It was more like a slow leak. She started canceling plans more. Started seeming distracted when we were together. Started picking at things, small things, with a precision that felt less like frustration and more like searching. Like she was looking for something to be wrong. I noticed. But I told myself everyone goes through phases. I told myself we were fine. I told myself a lot of things. There was one evening in February, about 3 months before the kitchen conversation, where she said something that I filed away and almost forgot. We were watching something on TV, nothing important, just background noise while we sat on her couch. She looked at me, out of nowhere, and said, "Do you ever feel like you need someone too much?" I turned to look at her. "What do you mean?" She shrugged. "Just wondering." And that was it. No follow-up. No explanation. I let it go. I shouldn't have. The weeks after that felt thicker somehow. Like the air in the apartment had changed pressure. She started spending more time on her phone. Not in a secretive way. Or at least, not in a way I could prove was secretive. Just more absent. More pulled somewhere else. I asked her once if everything was okay. She said yes. I asked her if she wanted to talk about anything. She said no. I asked if she was happy. She paused. Just long enough to notice. Then she said, "Yeah, of course." That pause. I felt it then, and I feel it now, writing this. That pause was the truth. Everything after it was just words. The fight that led to the kitchen conversation started over something ridiculous. I had made plans with a friend of mine, a guy named Qley, someone I'd known since college, for a Saturday afternoon. Just lunch. Just 2 hours. Kayla had assumed we were spending Saturday together. I hadn't known she'd assumed that. We hadn't talked about it. But she was upset. And the way she expressed upset had evolved over the past few months from something that felt like hurt into something that felt like accusation. "You always do this," she said. I asked what I always did. Prioritize everything else. I reminded her, calmly, that Qley had been going through a rough period and I'd promised to check in. She went quiet. Not the good kind of quiet. The kind of quiet that collects itself before something bigger. I suggested we talk about it when I got back. She said fine. I went. Lunch with Qley was good. He was doing better. We talked, laughed, caught up on months of missed time. I came home feeling lighter than I had in weeks. When I walked into the apartment, Kayla was sitting at the kitchen table. She looked like she'd spent the last 2 hours preparing something. I poured myself a glass of water, asked how her afternoon was. She didn't answer. She just looked at me with this expression, measured, practiced, and said, "I've been thinking." "Okay," I said. "I don't think this is working." And there it was. The sentence I'd been half afraid of for months. I stood very still. "Do you want to talk about why?" I asked. She shook her head slightly. "I just don't think you need me the way I need you to need me." I turned that sentence over in my head 3 times before responding. "I'm not sure I understand what that means." "It means," she said, "that I've always cared more. I've always been more invested. And it's exhausting." I looked at her, and I thought about the relocation I turned down. I thought about the Saturday mornings I'd skipped the gym to stay in bed with her because she didn't want to be alone. I thought about the fight with my own brother I'd navigated badly because I was distracted trying to fix her mood at a family dinner. I didn't say any of that, because in that moment, something told me it wouldn't matter. She had already decided. So instead I said, very quietly, "Okay." She blinked, like she'd expected something else. "Okay," she repeated. "Okay," I said again. And that's when she said it. That's when she straightened up, uncrossed and recrossed her arms, and let the smirk happen. "You'll never move on without me." She said it with conviction, like a fact, like physics. I looked at her for a long moment, set down my glass, and walked to the other room to start gathering the few things of mine that had accumulated in her apartment. She stayed in the kitchen. I think part of her expected me to argue, to beg, to break. I didn't. I put my things in a bag. I came back through the kitchen without stopping. I said, "Take care of yourself, Kayla." And I left. Within 20 minutes of leaving her apartment, I was blocked. Instagram, blocked. WhatsApp, blocked. Snapchat, blocked. My number, probably blocked too. I didn't test it. It was thorough, systematic, like she'd thought it through in advance. And maybe she had. Maybe the whole thing had been planned down to the last detail. Or maybe she just panicked when I didn't react the way she expected and decided that total erasure was the safest move. I sat in my car in the parking lot of her building for about 10 minutes. Not crying, not spiraling, just sitting, taking stock. This was real. 2 years, 3 months. Done. Just like that. I drove home. I want to be honest with you about what the first week was like. Because the internet version of this story would have me immediately glowing up, going to the gym, eating well, sleeping great, thriving. And that's not accurate. The first week was bad. Not dramatic bad. Not falling apart bad. But heavy. Quiet in a way that felt wrong. I'd reach for my phone out of habit to text her something. A stupid meme. A thought. A question. And then remember. I'd see something funny and feel the reflex to share it. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and have about 3 seconds of peace before the whole thing came back. That's what people don't talk about. It's not the big moments that hurt the most. It's the small automatic ones. The muscle memory of having someone. Qley checked in. My brother, who I'd been patchy with lately, called out of nowhere and asked if I wanted to grab food. I said yes. And somewhere in those first 2 weeks, I made a decision. Not loudly. Not as a dramatic declaration. Just quietly. To myself. In the same stillness that had come over me in that kitchen. I was not going to fall apart. Not because I was trying to prove her wrong. Not yet. But because I looked at my life in that moment and I realized that I had been shrinking. Slowly. Gradually. Without fully noticing. Rearranging myself to fit inside a space that kept getting smaller. And I was done with that. About 3 weeks after the breakup, I found out something. I didn't go looking for it. It found me. A mutual friend, a woman named Priya who I'd stayed in touch with after the breakup, sent me a screenshot. Just a screenshot, no message attached. Then a follow-up text, "I'm sorry. I thought you should know." The screenshot was a conversation between Priya and Qley from about 2 weeks before the kitchen conversation, from before Qley broke up with me. I'm not going to share the full thing because it's not the point, but the gist of it was this. Qley had been talking to someone else, not physically, but emotionally, a guy she'd reconnected with from before we were together. Long conversations, frequent enough to matter. And in that screenshot, she had written to Priya, "I think I'm going to end things. I need to figure out what this is with him." Priya had tried to talk her out of it, had told her to think carefully, had apparently suggested couples counseling. Qley had replied, "He'll be fine. He needs me more than I need him. He'll fall apart and then figure it out." I read that twice. He'll fall apart and then figure it out. Like my heartbreak was a scheduled event she'd already planned around. Like my pain was just a phase she'd already accounted for. I put my phone down, sat with that for a while, and then something crystallized. The "you'll never move on without me" line wasn't confidence. It was guilt management. She had already made her choice, made it weeks before she stood in that kitchen, and telling herself I'd fall apart was how she justified it. If I was weak without her, then leaving was almost doing me a favor. If I was dependent and helpless, then she wasn't the villain. She was just moving on from someone who couldn't keep up. That realization didn't make the pain go away, but it shifted something. It moved the weight. I'm not a self-help person. I don't journal. I don't make vision boards. I'm not interested in performing healing for an audience. But I did start paying attention to the ways I'd been neglecting things. Real, concrete things. I started going back to the gym consistently, not to transform my body, just because I'd always felt better when I was moving and I'd stopped during the relationship. I took on a project at work I'd been putting off. A challenging one. Something that required me to stretch past my comfort zone and actually focus. I started reading again. Small things. Daily things. Nothing revolutionary. But the accumulation of them started to feel like something. I reconnected with my brother properly. Had actual conversations, not surface-level check-ins. Turns out he'd been going through his own stuff. Career pressure, some tension at home, and we'd both been too caught up in our own lives to notice each other. We started having dinner once a week. Every Thursday. It became a thing. I started sleeping better. Started eating meals at a table instead of standing over my kitchen counter. Started taking my weekends back. I had forgotten how much I liked having unscheduled time. How good it felt to wake up on a Saturday with nothing mandatory on the calendar. Months passed. Quietly. Productively. I didn't make a big deal of it. I didn't post about it constantly. I didn't craft some narrative around my journey. I just lived it. And somewhere around month 3, I looked up from all of it and realized something had changed. The weight was gone. Not the memory. Not the lesson. But the heaviness. The thing that had pressed down on every morning for the first 6 weeks. It was just gone. I sat with that for a moment. And then I thought of that kitchen. And that smirk. And that line. And I almost smiled. Around month 4, something happened at work that I wasn't expecting. The project I'd taken on, the one I'd been quietly grinding through, caught the attention of someone senior. Not in a small way. My direct manager pulled me aside one afternoon and told me that leadership had noticed the work, that there was talk of moving me into a higher level role, that a conversation was coming and I should be ready. I walked out of that meeting to the parking garage, sat in my car, and did something I hadn't done in a long time. I laughed, just by myself, in the driver's seat, in the concrete quiet of a parking garage. Because the opportunity one had turned down a year earlier, the relocation that I had passed on for her, wasn't entirely off the table. A similar one had started circulating internally. And this time, nothing was holding me back. I want to be careful here because I'm not saying the breakup made my career. I'm saying the space that opened up when I stopped bending around her allowed me to show up differently. More focused, more available, more present at work because I wasn't constantly managing someone else's emotional weather. The role came through in month 5. A significant step up. Better title. Better pay. The relocation was on the table again, but optional this time, which I appreciated. I stayed in the city for now, but the door was open. And this time, it was only mine to walk through. Somewhere in month 5, Priya and I got coffee. We'd stayed loosely in touch. She was more my friend than Qley's at this point, honestly. And she brought up Qley in a way that felt careful, like she was testing how I'd receive it. She and that guy didn't work out, Priya said. I nodded. How long ago? I asked. About 6 weeks after you two ended things. 6 weeks. That's how long the thing she blew up 2 years for had lasted. I didn't feel smug about that. Or maybe I felt a little smug. I'm human. But mostly I just felt something settle. Because it confirmed something I'd been suspecting. That the breakup wasn't really about that other guy. He was just the moment she chose to find out. The exit she thought she wanted. The real issue was always something else. Some dissatisfaction in herself that she'd been pointing at me because it was easier than pointing it inward. Is she okay? I asked. Priya shrugged. She's Qley, she said, which was the most accurate non-answer I could imagine. I nodded and changed the subject. That was the last time I thought about Qley for about 3 weeks. Life had gotten full enough that there was less room for her in my head. That felt like the real win. Not the job, not the gym, not any of the visible stuff. The fact that she just wasn't taking up space anymore. That was the thing. Month 6. I'm not on social media constantly. Never have been. But I post occasionally, trip photos, random things I find interesting, the occasional gym update because Qley started an accountability challenge and I got looped in. Nothing dramatic. Just normal, irregular posting. One afternoon I got a follow request from an account I didn't recognize. Username was something generic. The kind of thing that reads as a real person but lands slightly off. Like someone picked words that sounded casual but didn't quite connect into a personality. The profile picture was a landscape photo. No face. No tag. For posts. All of them posted on the same day. All of them images that could have been pulled from anywhere on the internet. I stared at the account for about 30 seconds. I didn't accept the request, but I didn't decline it either. I left it pending and went about my day. Something was already moving in the back of my mind. I just wasn't ready to say it yet. 3 days later, I got a DM from that same account. It said, "Hey, long time." 2 words. "Hey, long time." I looked at that message for a full minute before doing anything. Then I looked at the account again. No followers. Following 3 accounts. All of them mine or mine adjacent. Posted on a single day. Landscape photo. Generic username. "Hey, long time." I knew. I didn't know no. I didn't have proof. But there's a part of the gut that doesn't need proof. It just recognizes things. I didn't respond. A week passed. Then another DM. "I just wanted to say I hope you're doing well." I stared at that one too. The phrasing was unmistakable. The cadence of it. The specific way the words were arranged. Qley had a particular way of starting passive reach-outs. Sentences that sounded like closure, but were actually just door knockers. "I just wanted to say" was one of her patterns. I'd heard it before. After arguments. After silences. It always meant, "I want you to open the door." I didn't respond. 3 more days. Another message. "I know you probably don't want to talk. I get it. I just wanted to reach out." "I know you probably don't want to talk. I get it. I just wanted to reach out." 3 sentences. Each one designed to lower my guard a little more. "I know you probably don't want to talk." Shows self-awareness. Makes you seem non-threatening. "I get it." Shows understanding. Suggests she's not pushing. "I just wanted to reach out." Lands the actual ask without technically being an ask. It was a very Qley construction. I recognized it the way you recognize an old song before the lyrics start. Just from the shape of it. I still didn't respond. I told Qley about the account. We were at the gym, between sets, and he asked why I seemed distracted. I told him. He put down the weight he was holding. "The fake account with the landscape picture?" he said. "Yeah. That's textbook," he said. "I know. Are you going to respond?" "I don't know yet." He looked at me for a second. "What's the version of you from 6 months ago doing right now?" I thought about it. Responding immediately. And the current version? Thinking about it. He picked the weight back up. "Progress," he said. That was the end of the conversation. But it sat with me. What was the right move here? Ignore it completely? Block the account and move on? Respond coldly? Or, and this was the thought I kept coming back to, respond with the kind of clarity that costs nothing and explains everything? I decided to do something first. Before I responded, before I did anything, I wanted to know for certain. Not because I needed confirmation to protect myself. I was already protected. But because I wanted to see it clearly. Without doubt. Without wondering if I was projecting. I asked Priya. Casually. I sent her the username of the account and asked if it looked familiar. She took about 4 minutes to respond. Then, "Where did you find this?" "It followed me," I said. Another pause. Longer this time. "I need to tell you something," she said. "Okay. About 2 weeks ago, Qley called me." "Okay." She was asking about you. Specifically, what you'd been up to, how you seemed, whether you were seeing anyone. I waited. I didn't tell her much. I kept it vague. But she was persistent. "Did she mention creating an account?" "No. But the next day she asked if I knew whether you still posted on Instagram. That was enough. That was the confirmation I needed. Not legal proof, but human proof. The kind that matters in real life. Let me stop here and give you the part I've been holding back. Because this is the reveal moment. The thing that reframes everything. About a week before the breakup, a month before I'd noticed the first signs of distance, I had caught something that I'd consciously, deliberately chosen to ignore. She'd left her laptop open on the kitchen counter. She was in the shower. I wasn't snooping. I was walking past. But the screen was there, angled toward me. And I saw a name. A conversation. Open. Long. Recent. I looked away immediately. Because looking felt like a violation, even accidentally. And I told myself I hadn't seen what I saw. That it was nothing. That everyone talks to people. I made myself believe that. For 4 more weeks. Until the kitchen. Until the smirk. Until, you'll never move on without me. And now, sitting here, months later, with a fake account in my DMs and previous texts on my screen, I understood the full picture. She had made a decision. She had planned an exit. She had emotionally pre-moved while I was still fully present. And when she finally delivered the exit, she'd armored herself with that line, "You'll never move on," because she needed it to be true. She needed me to fall apart. She needed me to validate the story she'd told herself about why she left. And I hadn't. And now, 6 months later, she was watching from behind a fake account, looking at the life I was building, and she'd started knocking. I thought about it for 2 days. Not obsessively, not with anger, just clearly. The way you think through a decision when the emotion has already settled and what's left is just a choice. Option 1. Ignore the account entirely. Block it. Say nothing. Move on without any acknowledgement. That was clean. That was easy. But there was something incomplete about it. For me, not for her. Because I had been silent in that kitchen. And silence had been right then. Silence had been the correct response in that moment. But this was different. This wasn't her ending things. This was her returning. Quietly. Under a disguise. To watch. And then to knock. Option 2. Respond. Not angrily. Not with a list of everything she'd done wrong. Not with a speech. Just respond. With clarity. With the exact kind of stillness I'd had in that kitchen. Let her see, very simply, what the last 6 months had actually looked like. I drafted it once. Then I read it back and deleted everything that sounded like I was trying to win something. Because I wasn't. I didn't want to win. I wanted to close a door properly. The way you close a door. Not slam it. Not leave it hanging open. Just close it. Quietly. With finality. I wrote, "Hey, I'm not sure if this is you, but it feels like it might be. If it is, I genuinely don't have any anger about what happened. I think we ended where we needed to end. But I want to be clear about where things are now. I'm good. Actually good. Not performatively, not to prove anything. Just genuinely settled in a way I haven't been in a long time. The months since have been some of the best I can remember. I don't say that to hurt you. I say it because I want you to know that the thing you said before you left, that I'd never move on, that didn't happen. And this isn't what moving on looks like. This is just me living. I think you should do the same. I really do. Take care of yourself." I read it 3 more times. Changed 2 words. And sent it. Then I put my phone face down on the desk and went back to the project I'd been working on. She didn't reply immediately, which told me something. If it had truly been a random stranger, they would have been confused. Or annoyed. Or they would have said something like, "Wrong person." The account went quiet for 12 hours. Then, at 11:47 p.m., I saw the notification the next morning. She sent. "How did you know it was me?" That was the confirmation. Not that I needed it anymore. But there it was. I read the message and put my phone back down. I went to the gym. I came home. Made coffee. Sat at my kitchen table. The same chair, where I'd sat through so many bad mornings in the first few weeks, and looked at the message again. "How did you know it was me?" Not, "This isn't me." Not, "You have the wrong person." "How did you know?" I typed one response. "Some things just feel familiar." Sent it. And then I blocked the account. Not out of anger. Not as a power move. Just because the door was closed now. And closed doors don't need to be watched. I want to go back to something, because now is when it lands differently. Do you remember the night she said, "Do you ever feel like you need someone too much?" I told you I'd filed that away. I told you I should have paid more attention. Here's the thing I've since understood about that question. She wasn't asking about me. She was asking about herself. She was already deep in those other conversations at that point. Already uncertain about what she felt and who she felt it for. And what she was really asking that night, in the quiet blue light of that TV, was, "Is it okay to need something I don't have?" Is it okay to want more than this? She couldn't ask me that directly, so she turned it into a general question. Philosophical, vague, and I, not understanding what was underneath it, just sat with the confusion and let it go. I've thought about that night a lot since. Not with resentment, more with something like recognition. She wasn't a villain. She was someone who didn't know how to want something honestly, who couldn't look at a feeling directly and so wrapped it in other people, in sidelong questions, in carefully constructed lines. You'll never move on without me wasn't cruelty. It was fear. Her fear, dressed up as certainty. Because if I needed her desperately, then she wasn't abandoning me. She was just moving, and I could catch up eventually. Or not. But either way, it wasn't really her fault. That's how she needed the story to go. And I robbed her of that story. Not on purpose. Just by being okay. By being more than okay. By turning into someone she didn't expect. A few days after I blocked the account, Priya texted me. She called me. Priya wrote. I figured, I replied. She's struggling, Priya said. I know. Are you okay? And I thought about that question for a moment. Am I okay? I looked around my apartment. Clean, organized, quiet in a good way. I thought about the new role. About the Thursday dinners with my brother. About the gym and Qley and the project and the travel I'd started planning. A trip I'd always wanted to take and never had because it never fit into someone else's schedule. I thought about that kitchen. About the glass of water. About the smirk. And I thought about how far that moment was from where I was sitting right now. Yeah, I typed back. I really am. And then I put the phone down and went back to my day. I went on that trip. I want to tell you about it because it matters to the story in a way that isn't obvious. I went alone. And I want to say that carefully because solo travel can sound like a consolation prize, like something you do because you have no one to go with. It wasn't like that. I chose alone. I'd looked at the plan and thought about who I might invite, and then realized I didn't want to coordinate. I didn't want to compromise on what I wanted to see or how long I wanted to stay somewhere or when I wanted to eat. I wanted to just be somewhere, without the weight of another person's needs or moods or preferences, for the first time in longer than I could remember. And I went. 10 days. A mix of cities and coastlines. Long drives. Terrible local food that was somehow perfect. I stayed in cheap places and expensive places depending on nothing but the mood I was in that day. I didn't post much. I didn't document it for anyone. I just lived it. And on the fourth night, sitting at a table outside a small restaurant, watching the sky go dark over water I'd never seen before, I had a thought. Quiet. Simple. Almost embarrassingly simple. I'm exactly where I want to be. Not a grand realization. Not a turning point. Just a fact. Present tense. Simple and true. I thought about Qley for about 30 seconds. Not with anger. Not with longing. More with something like acknowledgement. She happened. That happened. And this is what came after. And then I ordered another coffee and watched the water until the stars came out. I'm not going to tell you I never think about those 2 years. I do. You can't spend that much time with someone, give that much of yourself, and then just delete the file. Nor should you want to. Those years happened. They shaped things. But the shape they made isn't the one she predicted in that kitchen. She thought she was describing a future where I'd be diminished, where I'd be less without her, where I'd exist in some reduced state, waiting to be retrieved. What she was actually doing, without knowing it, was describing her own fear. Because people who are secure don't say things like that. People who have peace don't need you to fall apart to feel okay about leaving. She needed me to need her, because she needed to matter. And somewhere in that relationship, I had stopped being a person to her and become a proof. Proof that she was necessary. Proof that she was irreplaceable. And when the proof didn't hold, when I stood in that kitchen and said okay instead of please, she panicked. And she covered the panic with a smirk and a confident line. And then she blocked me on every platform because she couldn't afford to watch. And then, 6 months later, she couldn't afford not to. And I get it. I actually do. That's the version of this story that doesn't make her a monster. That makes her just someone who was scared and didn't know how to be scared out loud and made decisions from that fear that cost both of us something. I paid the price, and then I built something with it. She's still paying. I genuinely hope she figures it out. I hope she learns how to want things honestly, how to ask for what she needs without disguising it as philosophy, how to be afraid without turning it into armor. I hope she gets there, but I am not going to wait around to see it. 2 weeks after I got back from the trip, Qley and I were sitting outside a coffee place. Afternoon sun, no particular agenda. He asked me how I was. And for once I didn't immediately default to fine. I actually sat with it for a second. Honestly, I said, yeah, I feel like myself. Like, the version of myself I sort of forgot was there. He nodded. The relationship thing did a number on you, he said. Yeah. You got quiet. I thought about that. Not just quiet, I said. I got small. He looked at me. I know, he said. I watched it happen. Didn't know what to say. Nothing you could have said. I know. But I still watched. We sat with that for a minute. She sent a few more messages, I said. From a new account. He raised an eyebrow. And I blocked that one too. He nodded. Good. Yeah. He picked up his coffee. The fact that she's doing all that, he said slowly, says a lot about how she thought you'd respond to her leaving. She thought I'd collapse, I said. And instead you built something. Yeah. And now she's watching. Yeah. He leaned back. Must be strange for her, he said. And I thought about that. Strange for her. To have predicted one thing with such confidence. To have said it out loud. With a smirk. And then to watch the complete opposite unfold, post by post, behind a fake account, alone. Yeah. I imagine it's strange. A few months after all of this, I've lost track of the exact count now, which tells you something. I ran into someone who knew Qley. Casually. At a work event. Someone who moved in overlapping social circles. We recognized each other, but weren't close. She brought up Qley once, briefly, the way you do when you're trying to connect two separate parts of your life. Oh, you know Qley? How is she doing? She asked. I don't know, I said. We haven't spoken. She nodded. Right. She mentioned you once. And then she moved on to something else. I let it pass. I didn't ask what Qley had said. I didn't need to know. Whatever version of this story Qley tells about me, whatever role I play in her narrative, I have no control over. And I've realized that's fine. Because the story I actually lived is not the one she scripted. She wrote a version where I fall apart. Where I chase. Where I break. I don't live in that version. I never did. I want to end with something that isn't a lesson. I'm not here to teach you anything. But there's something I've thought about a lot. That moment in the kitchen, when she said what she said, and I went quiet. I didn't plan that silence. I didn't choose it strategically. It was just what happened when I looked at her and understood, in a single second, that no words from me were going to change the next 5 minutes. That no explanation, no argument, no pleading was going to matter. So I said okay, and I walked out. And that silence, that one unplanned, unscripted, completely honest silence, followed her. For months. Into fake accounts. Into DMs. Into late-night messages. Because she had expected noise. She had prepared for noise. She had a whole speech ready for noise. And I gave her nothing. And nothing, it turns out, is the loudest thing in the world. She said I'd never move on without her. She was wrong. But more than that, she was asking the wrong question. The question was never whether I could move on. The question was always what I would become when the space opened up. And now I know. The glass of water I left on her counter that night is probably long gone. But I think about it sometimes. Just sitting there. Going still. Exactly like I did.